Oh, I'm gonna use the gavel.
Yeah.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. In Peter's absence, he asked me to lead the meeting, so let's start as we always do with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do you want to announce that Peter and Shannon are here?
Sure. So Peter Quigley is with us via Skype. He is in Denver tonight, and Shannon Mosa is with us. She's actually in Vienna, where it's 1 a.m., and she's with us as well, telephonically. So the first agenda item is for us to approve the minutes of February 7th, which we got today.
I move to approve the minutes of February 7th.
Second.
Any discussion?
No, they look fine to me.
Yeah, I thought they looked fine. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Public comment. Anybody want to talk? We're going to have two public comments. We do it before we address stuff, and then we do it at the end, so it gives you a chance to speak both times. Nobody yet? Okay, great. All right. So the reason for our meeting tonight is discussion of the FY19 school department budget. Here we are 3 days before town meeting, and we're at an impasse with the town of Duxbury. A lot of coverage in the Clipper today. I thought there were a couple good letters. So let's see where we go. And I'm just going to turn it over to John, Dr. Antonucci, to give his comments, and then we can talk about where we're at.
So I'll be glad to provide some context. Peter, do you want me to start, or do you want to start, or?
Yeah, no, you go ahead, John.
Well, so I don't really know totally where to start. So there's sort of a lot that I think is just worth putting on the table for discussion. But I sent a memo a couple days ago, sort of a combination effort. Peter and I put this together, and we basically I would call it an impasse. We're at an impasse with the town about our budget, and we have really, I guess, three things or a couple of things currently on the table for discussion. The first is that at your December 20th meeting, you decided as a board to approve the level services budget plus an additional 2.9 FTE positions at the middle school for basically class size mitigation.
Yep.
On this memo I sent you, I did want to make just an important note on that, is there was a lot of moving parts between November 15th, when we first presented the budget, and December 20th, and that calculation of that level service budget, and then ultimately your approved budget, actually, at the time, the town had committed to us an additional $50,000. That has since been pulled off the table. So even that number that you approved, that higher number, the level of services plus 2.9 FT, is actually $50,000 short of us being able to do that. So there's, again, a lot of moving parts, but I think that's important to clarify. So that's sort of one thing. Do you as a committee want to just go forward with that number, and what does that look like? The second thing is, do we push forward with just a level services budget? And although really not much has changed since November 15th, in fact, I'd argue we maybe have gone backwards with our discussions from the town. Our actual number in the level services budget has changed. It's up on the screen right here. And just for clarity purposes, I want to share how we got to the number that would be our level services number. Mm-hmm. And that is, and I'll stand up if that's okay, but when we presented our budget on November 15th, this is our level services number, right? And that the detail of that is contained in the budget document. Since then, though, we removed this $400,000 sped stabilization infusion. That's actually the subject of a lot of conversation, right? So that's gone. We have since committed an additional $150,000 out of our circuit breaker reimbursement. And I might add, this is a significant move, and I don't want to lose sight of that. We are being asked to be less than conservative, and this is a less than conservative move. And no one else has made any other move other than that since November 15th. And then the town, though, I shouldn't say nothing, since then, we returned last year to the town, our operating budget money. We returned almost $132,000 to the town. They are effectively returning that to us as a revenue source or as an offset to the budget. That's school department money that we turn back. So when you do all the math, right, you start here and then kind of move on down. This is our new level services number, 35,766. That's all that's changed. Any questions on that? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page with that.
John, the 50,000 that they took out of the first option, does that impact level service? That was on the table that they took off with the number that we voted? Wouldn't that be 50,000 out of the level service as well?
Well, I mean, the level service number, let me think about that. I mean, I'd have to get through the math behind that, but this number here, this level service number, is just a level service number. So that's our expenses.
Okay,
It doesn't really factor in.
What the town?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was just, if we
okay.
stuck with our original number, it would have to be 50,000 more. Because when we voted that number, there was another 50 on the table that they've rescinded.
That would have, let me think about this for a second. That would have reduced, no, really just a funding source, I guess.
So the number's the same?
It's some mental math. Mental gymnastics. I have to think, no, I don't know how
These numbers are the numbers?
These numbers are the
Okay.
numbers, yeah, 35,766, yeah. Sorry, that's an interesting question. I got to think about how the math.
Yeah, John, I think the 50,000 would have gotten us closer to the level service, but it doesn't change what the level service was.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for
Thanks, Peter.
clarifying. So that's a second thing, level service. The third thing is, we've had a few meetings in the last month or so. Peter's been part of some. I was part of the most recent one with Dave. Is that this number here? Go back to that level service slide. Even our level service number, when you consider what the town has voted, the finance committee and town managers put forth as a budget, we still have a gap of $172,000. When we met with the town manager and finance director last week, they had proposed that we close that gap by us reducing our budget by another $80,000 and by them contributing $92,000 effectively from free cash through sped stabilization again. And that would have closed the level service budget gap. I sort of took that under advisement, really, for lack of a better description. We've been told for several months now that that wasn't an option. And I think at this point, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the committee, it's something for you to decide. I just don't feel, given what we've given already, to get down to this number, $150,000 additional circuit breaker, I don't know that I want to cut another $80,000 off level services, but that is an offer that was on the table. My major problem with that is that we're already starting in the hole next year. At a minimum, by this amount of money, this idea of the return school funds at $131,000. So it's a budget offset this year. It's not going to be there next year, so we're already in the hole 131. If they do this additional $92,000 in free cash, that's just another $92,000, and then you add on the technology that gets stripped away, we're starting behind the eight ball. But it is an option, and so I don't mean to disregard it, but it wasn't something I felt comfortable with. But I did just want to let you know, and you do know about it. But any questions on that?
No, I mean, I think your point that we were scolded in a public meeting for using free cash to fund the special education reserve fund and then actually use the money. And so, once burned, twice shy.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that again and get scolded next year for doing what they told us to do, right? So I think that's off the table as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and Betsy Sullivan wrote an article today in the Clipper, and she basically says that's bad business. We can't
It
use free
is.
cash.
It
And
is.
that's the offer that they gave us. So I thought that was a little interesting, but.
It confused me. So that's something, right? So those are the kind of options that we've been talking about, but I just want to share a few more kind of tidbits of information that I've been working on. They're all kind of random, but they're all for a point. This is a point that we've been talking about a lot internally, and Peter and I have had some discussions about this, and I think maybe with all of you. But last year, and actually for the last few years, the town has been very generous with the school department by funding the lease of our one-to-one computer program. So for the last 4 years, they've given, on top of the operating budget, $300,000 to the school department. That lease expired, as you all know, this year, so it's not, we're kind of taking a year hiatus, so it's not needed for that. But I want to point out, though, when you consider last year, the amount of money that came to the school department, you had an operating budget increase last year of $920,000. You had additional funding. I have an asterisk, but I don't have the note. You had additional funding of $300,000 for the technology lease. So last year, the town was able to commit directly to the school department for school department services $1.22 million. Right now, we don't have the lease purchase, but right now, the number that they're recommending is $1,080,000. So when you compare what they gave the schools last year, and when you compare what they're recommending this year, they're actually giving us $140,000 less than they gave us a year ago. And so I would just ask, and I have asked this question, if you could afford it last year, why couldn't you afford it this year? And I think that's an important, again, this is just about level service, bear in mind, but that to me is an important distinction. So we are getting less money this year as a school department than we got last year. To me, that's troubling. That's concerning. Does that make sense?
Yep.
You know what?
Could,
There's some other
Could
things.
I,
Yeah.
John, do you have more?
No, I think for now that's fine, Peter. I think that's enough to start with.
Well, there were two things. Unfortunately, this process has demanded so much of Dr. Antonucci and David Proul, and frankly, my own time and our committee's time. The best news of all is it will be over on Saturday, because this is highly counterproductive for the mission of the schools. The fact that we're in this position, I don't know why and how we got to this position, but it seems like positions were hardened early in the process, and we've failed to make substantial progress since. I think the other consideration is, as you all are aware, for several years, not just this year, we've sought just high-level public information about the budgeting process to ensure that the schools are developing a budget which is reasonable and consistent with our mission of advocating effectively for the schools. That request has not been met. Very basic. I've asked for historical revenue and historical expenses and assumed next year, fiscal 19 in this case, information. And for whatever reason, that request has been met with really significant resistance. very frustrating because it's all public data. And those of you who joined us at the selectmen's meeting, you saw what happened when I cited data that I had gotten in pieces. I went to public domain resources. I was told at the selectmen's meeting very directly that they didn't know where we got our numbers, and frankly, they didn't seem to be quite right. I can assure you the numbers that I presented to the selectmen meeting were right. So we just have a very basic disconnect that we don't seem to have a process that at the end of the day has been as effective as I think it should be, and is certainly not consistent with best practices. Just today, and I think you saw the response from the town manager when we sought potential sources of funding beyond the Finance Committee approved budget. And the response, perhaps not surprisingly, was very concerning and also quite disappointing in that the available tax levy is a number that is, just for lack of better words, approximately 100,000. And there virtually will be no free cash as a result of the articles, both in the special and the annual town meeting. So the town is managed, and John, you have that perhaps open in front of you, but what was the total free cash balance before the town meeting?
3 million.
I think it was 2.949 million.
Okay, so I just would like to go on record, and I think we certainly will make this case that the town is deciding to spend $2.9 million at town meeting floor. That amount, free cash, has been talked about as not being free or not being cash, and yet it seems consistently over the last several years significant resources. And when you look at 2.9 million being spent at town meeting as a percentage of overall town budget, that's 3 to 4% of our total town budget. It's a significant amount of money in the context of overall town revenues and town finance. So what we're being told, and John and I had a very brief conversation before this meeting, is what we're being told is the town does not have the money to meet not just our voted school committee budget, but does not have the money to meet level services. If we took all the money that the town has said is available, without cutting other departments, we would have, if we make a motion to accept level services or the school committee voted budget, based on the information the town manager provided us this afternoon, we'd have to recommend cuts in other departments. So I think school committee, we have to recognize that our role is not year to year. It's over long term to make sure that we enhance and support our public schools. I think we're in a very poor position this year, and for whatever reason, I don't know why this position was taken by the town. I think the town is choosing to spend money in places other than where historically this school has spent money in the past. So I think there really is a third position that we have to consider if we're considering a vote, well, maybe call it 4 positions, to recommend on town meeting floor the voted budget that we took on December 20th, the level service budget, the budget approved by the Finance Committee, plus an additional $92,000 contribution to the Special Ed Stabilization Fund. And third, or fourth, I would say, I think we have to consider a budget which utilizes the unused tax levy, not a dollar more, not a dollar of the free cash. But that number is $106,000 beyond what the Finance Committee approved budget is, if my figures are right. Maybe I should just confirm that, but John, do you have that? See, the levy limit amount. So anyhow, I think there are 4 things that we have to discuss in terms of alternatives. But I'm very concerned about making a recommendation on town meeting floor with a motion where the town has told us the total available resources to fund our request in the form of the unused levy and the free cash is roughly $130,000. So if we took all the cash and all the unused levy, we can't get to our level service budget. frankly shocking that we're spending $2.9 million on town meeting floor, but that's what we're being told.
Peter, I have up on the screen too, that just for an FYI, the historical unused tax levy. Can you just make that a little bigger, Tim? So this is the last 5 years. Last year was 429, year before was 400, and you can read the rest.
Yeah,
And the estimate that we have on that prior slide was 101.
right.
So, to me, one of the difficulties we find ourselves, if we ask for an amount more than the unused tax levy or the free cash combined, we will have to make one of two arguments: either the numbers they've assumed are incorrect, or that the revenue has to come from somewhere else, and the only other places are other operating departments in the town. I think that puts us in a really terrible position. But anyhow, I just wanted to say I think those are the considerations that we have to come to. It's very disappointing that that's what those numbers are. It's also disappointing that they weren't available until 3 o'clock this afternoon or whatever time we received the email. It's also very disappointing that we haven't gotten the historical information and the underlying assumptions for this year's budget that we've been asking for 2 months. So does that frame it up? You can tell I'm concerned about the position we've been put in. I think this isn't the way to govern a town that's a town that we all love and have chosen to live. It can't be the right process for us to, discuss as a community the priorities of our spending. But I think we're kind of behind it a bit this year.
Well, interesting. I'm following what you're saying, and in the past couple of weeks, I've put together a timeline of the budget process this past year, based on the minutes for school committee, board of selectmen, and finance committee. I haven't shared it with the rest of you yet because I can't make the Prezi software work to share, basically. But when I get my act together, I will do that. But just looking at the timeline, it's clear that school committee, there's no public record of any sharing of revenue projections for the town with school committee. It's not to say that meetings didn't happen, that information wasn't conveyed, but it didn't happen in a public forum and wasn't recorded. So school committee members have a difficult time understanding what town finance looks like if there's no public record of discussions relating to town finance. And moreover, voters probably have a difficult time working out town finance if they can't access the public record either. So I think we're in a difficult position because for some reason we've been out of the decision-making loop. And that became very clear in November when it appears that the day before the superintendent was to present his initial presentation of the fiscal 19 operating budget. The day before was the moment he came to understand, thanks to the chairman of the FinCom, that there would be no $400,000 for special education reserve contribution and no $300,000 for laptops. So, that suggests to me that there had been very little discussion between town and school up until the 14th of November. And FinCom ended up voting its proposal for the school's operating budget on the 28th of November. The school committee, as we all know, we had our public meeting relating to our budget, and we voted the budget on the 20th of December. So at least 3 weeks after that. So really, we're at an impasse or in a difficult position because of the process. And that, I think, needs to change. And I think next year we'll be in a position to understand what we're up against and to do things a bit differently. But it doesn't give us much joy this year, as you say.
Peter, it's Kelly. Back to the numbers. So if we ask for everything from the town, you're saying it's $130,000? That's all they have that they're saying?
Yes.
So
and
that,
again, I think I think the school is the school committee is disadvantaged to make an argument that the numbers are overly conservative or inconsistent with recent history. All we can do is take the professionals that are employed by the town and take their information provided to us as the basis under which we could make a motion on town meeting floor. So there are three sources of potential revenue to vote or make a motion on the floor that is in excess of the Finance Committee budget. I'm not an expert on town meeting, but my understanding is if you make a motion to expand the funding beyond what's been approved or recommended by Finance Committee, you actually have to identify the source. There's really three sources. One is the unused tax levy for fiscal 19. That's an estimate because fiscal 19 has not yet begun. The second is free cash. And the third is a reduction in an operating expense somewhere else in the town budget. So I'd say, I would just say matter of factly, I don't think we're in any way, shape, or form prepared to make a recommendation on another town department's operating budget. So I would say quite strongly, I think that should be off the table. So it's basically two sources of revenue. I think the unused tax levy, I believe, is a conservative estimate, but it's the estimate that we've been given. We can't spend. I think we should be cautious to not reach for 28,000 of free cash because I think in the scheme of things that's immaterial. But it's also, I mean, John, a case in point, if they were going to provide 92,000 of free cash to the SPED stabilization fund, is that money now being committed elsewhere? Because it shows on the schedule that they don't have that money.
I know, yeah, it's true.
Yeah. I don't know if that means that they've already made decisions to spend that money elsewhere. You guys, you saw that kind of when I saw it. That email came. I've been requesting it. You saw the email communication there. I've been requesting it for over a week. I understand there's a lot going on in town. We've had a natural disaster or two, but that's the fact. So to me, to me, I have a hard time understanding how we could advocate for anything really beyond 106. I just don't know how we could do it. And so that's none of that's to discuss. But again, this information was just provided to us today, and I don't think we're well served by arguing why we believe those numbers are not. I think we can, express our concern, and certainly we can look back a year from now, and if the unused tax levy is $400,000 or $500,000, and we were told it was estimated at 100, I think we have a case to be made that, building up multi-million dollars year after year of free cash and, overly conservative assessments of unused tax levy, given the economy, given property values in Duxbury, given the health of the economy in the Commonwealth and in Duxbury, I think we'll have the benefit of being able to look backwards. But at this point on Saturday, my view is I think our choices are not great. So anyhow, you can tell by my demeanor. I'm an optimistic, positive person, but it's disappointing what town is telling us. They're telling you they don't have, on an $85 million budget, they don't have the resources to fund us at level services. I don't know any other way that we can say that. That's what they're telling us. So, my recommendation is, okay, well, let's move on and let's position ourselves so that this does not happen in fiscal 20. I think it's really unfair to our superintendent to ask him to make a case for continued support of the schools going forward, or expanded support potentially. We wanted Dr. Antonucci to get his feet underneath him. We have an interim assistant. We have a new high school principal. We'll have a new middle school principal next year. We'll have a new assistant superintendent. So, no, a lot of change. But to me, I think and I'm committed, and I know all of you are committed with me to start working on next year's budget now. I just don't know what we can do about fiscal 19.
So, Peter, just to clarify, going back to this free cash amount, looking at John's 5-year chart, looks like the town has maintained an amount of at least $2 million in free cash each year. So, and that money is generated from the difference between revenue and expenditure during that fiscal year. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, they're either undercutting or underestimating expenses, suppressing expenses relative to revenue in order to generate at least $2 million of free cash every year. So I don't quite understand why they think they're not going to do that next year.
Well, so I think, Julia, one part is that the long-range capital planning process has been used to fund annual capital expenditures with free cash. So there's sort of an intentional $1 million per year surplus to be generated to fund capital on an ongoing basis without relying upon debt.
Right.
So the bigger projects the town is looking to fund via debt. The incremental annual new truck for the schools or new windows for Chandler, that quite intentionally is coming from free cash. But I think, this year, $2.9 million is going to be spent at town meeting. That's an extraordinary amount to be spending at a single meeting at the end of the year left over. So I think it is a reflection of the strong economy, conservative forecasting, which is appropriate to an extent. But the flip side is it's so unfortunate that this would be the year that we're feeling what I think rightly is a squeeze, but I think the notion of $1 million at minimum, and because in the way that the school wants to budget in a way which is conservative, and the surplus funds at the end of the year we can use to prepay special education, we can return funds to the town, we can make expenditures that we couldn't necessarily budget for. The town does the same thing, but I think in this case, I think it's quite clear that an argument over 170,000 never really, there was no discussion. It was, we were told this was the amount, take it or leave it, the town has no money. And that's essentially what they're telling us. The town does not have the money to fund a level service budget for the schools. The bottom line, that's the thing that I think is very disappointing. My view on our discussion tonight was going to be for the position we voted December 20th, the level service other number. But, we're essentially being told that the town doesn't have the resources to support a level service budget. And again, I don't know about other people can comment. I don't personally feel comfortable and or prepared or informed enough to possibly think about where other operating costs should be cut in the town. I think we're put in a really tough position. And again, I think we have a long view here. I think we will engage the community. I think Dr. Antonucci is committed to that. I think we are as well. We're going to start now. But so I don't view what happens at this year's town meeting as being, going to change fundamentally how the school performs next year. It's just we need to not let this happen again in the future because it's going to be worse going forward. So So I don't want to have a monologue here. I really want to stimulate discussion, but I'm quite concerned by the numbers the town provided to us, and need to make a case for spending beyond what the town has told us they have available.
No, Peter, I agree with you, and I would never pirate another department's operating budget, and I think that is an absolutely horrific position that the town has put us in. I think they did that intentionally. Here we are 3 days before town meeting, and now money that used to be available isn't available. We can't even get to level service. So if we can get the 106,000 on top of the 101,000, that leaves us $71,000 short of our operating budget, right? For our level service budget, which means we will be cutting our budget, okay? Make no mistake. We have class sizes of 30 at the middle school. We cut a nurse position last year. We cut a librarian last year. And years prior, we have cut FTEs at all of the schools. So make no mistake, Town of Duxbury has decided that the schools can afford to be cut because there's no other way to look at it. The number that they have offered us does not meet our contractual obligation to our staff. 82.3% of our budget is contractual obligation, and 27.3%, if that's my math, 17.3% is special education.
Oh, sorry,
No, it's 27.
22.
17, but the part of that 17% is salaries that are part of that other.
Part of the special ed.
contractual obligation.
And last year, we were given $400,000 in a revolving fund, which was basically free cash, which the town says they don't have for special education students, that we now own in our operating budget, and we have been told you cannot have that $400,000. So we're down $400,000, we're not meeting contractual obligation, and we can't have level service, so we're gonna have further cuts. We've been put in a position where we can't make any other choice. And I, for one, feel that that's completely unfortunate, and I've been involved in the Duxbury Public Schools since my son, who is now in college, entered kindergarten, and I have absolutely no idea why the town has decided this year to put us in a position where we have to cut
Kelly,
and not make level service.
You were also in that position last year, too. I want to remind
and I
you.
was-
Yeah, but
yeah.
this is a pattern.
Yeah.
And so
It is a pattern. And to be given a number before we've even voted a budget and told the town that this is what we need to run the schools properly is astounding to me. And there's all these, I'm on school committee. I have no idea what the town manager and the finance director and the FinCom director have told other people on the committee. It's all behind the scenes, it's backroom deals, and it's completely unacceptable. It's unacceptable to the students, the staff, the parents, and the whole town. It's your tax money. It needs to be different going forward. And we have no ask this year for computer leases, and we're going to have lease money that we need next year. We're going to have special ed expenses next year, and nothing's going to change. I mean, if Duxbury, if they, 25 to 30 in a class, 30 to 40 in a class, paper and pencil, right? See where we stand in 5 years, see how we measure. It's not a good trend. People move to this town and pay taxes and pay the property value for their homes because they come here for the schools, right? A lot of the folks, and then they stay because it's a beautiful town. And I don't understand.
Well, and,
I'm not understanding why this position has been taken this year against the schools.
Well, and Kelly, could I just want to make a very brief comment. You know, unfortunately, this has played out where there's this pitting of the school community with the broader community of Duxbury. And, you know, we all choose to live in this town. Many parents who raise children, they remain in town when their children decide to live in Duxbury. You know, the schools are so central, and our parents and our grandparents and the children in our schools are so central to our community. I certainly don't think of the town and the schools. I mean, we're one community, and I think I think for whatever reason, there was a sense that the school could be more efficient, and that the town could, challenge the schools to operate more effectively and more efficiently. But I think it's not. I don't think consistent with past practices in the community. I don't think it's reflective of our community. So I think we are right to recognize really this. We have a new superintendent who we hired not to tread water, but to help the district go forward. His financial communication literacy skills, along with his educational leadership, were key requirements. His ability to articulate a vision for the district. Okay, and now rubber's going to hit the road. We're going to focus on painting a picture for where we'd like the schools to go in the future, and make a case to advocate. And I don't think we should view the outcome of this town meeting as reflective of community support or engagement for the schools, because we've really not sought to reach out and engage the community. But that will be different next year, for sure.
Agreed. Julia?
I haven't got much more to add. Matt, you got anything
No,
you want to
I
add?
think everything's been said.
What's that? Ask him. Should I?
Yeah, just say, Randy, it's Norris Town Manager.
Rainey, we noticed you came in. Is there anything you want to say?
No, I'm just here to see what the vote will be.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Shannon, is she still there?
yeah, Shannon.
Maybe she's gone to sleep.
Yeah.
Shannon, well, have you any words of wisdom from Vienna?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm, in agreement with much of what you and Peter and Julia have already said. It's been a very disappointing process, and I think the school committee is put in a very difficult position. And I don't really see more than one alternative to adhere for us. So, and I think it's the most very important thing going forward is figuring out how this is going to work in the future. For this.
Well, Shannon, your opinion is so valuable, but also thank you so much for staying up now till nearly 2 a.m. in Vienna to participate in this discussion. For the sake of moving forward, do we think there should be a motion relative to the position we'll take at town meeting? And maybe we could have a little bit further discussion about how town meeting, how we expect it to go. I think I would just make a recommendation that we focus very much on the future, and we just be mindful of the need for us to engage the community more effectively. So I don't want to get into a situation about what was flawed with this past process. I think we just have to be 11th, working on 2020 and really active engagement in the community, because the school community is the community. It's not the town versus the schools or the school community. So, my short of a motion, my recommendation is we vote a budget that would involve a motion at town meeting, which would be to use the estimated unused tax levy for fiscal 19, not touch free cash. I think the fact the town is spending $2.9 million of free cash at town meeting speaks for itself. I don't think we need to ask to use that, and that's a motion that we make on the town meeting floor, and we start working on 2020 and active engagement of our community broadly. Starting the day after town meeting. I'm personally committed to that, and I know all of you are as well. So I don't know if there's discussion or if people are happy to act on the motion that I'm making.
I'll second the motion, Peter. But I will say that I don't like being put in this position at all. And I'm astounded that we've been told tonight that there's no free cash and we can only possibly get another 101. I'm absolutely astounded. I mean, it was 172 apart. The fact that the town would not come up with $172,000 to meet our level service budget is just, I will move on, and we will go forward in changing things next year, but it means cuts for next year. Any way you slice it, it means cuts. And that doesn't sit well with me as an elected member to represent the schools.
Peter, as we've registered with the town clerk that we have a school committee meeting during annual town meeting. That means that we can deliberate Saturday, right?
Yep.
So, and seeing as how we just got the information from the town this afternoon, half an hour before, I only opened it half an hour before our meeting. I'm wondering if there might be an opportunity to consider your motion and decide on it Saturday morning.
Well, so that's certainly a good question. I guess what a consideration is, anyone at town meeting can make a motion, and the committee should be prepared to make a motion so we don't leave it to a parent who maybe doesn't have the benefit of the information that we do. So, because I know some parents have been engaged, but we have not sought broad engagement with our community. So my only concern, Julia, is that we're prepared to make a motion, and we certainly could finalize what we decide the morning of town meeting. And I'm certainly fine with that, but I don't think we should leave it to the floor to come up with a motion on the school budget. I think the school committee should be prepared to take a position. Certainly could wait till Saturday morning. I would say, what will change between now and Saturday morning? That's my only concern. Is I'm sure, I don't know what would change that would lead us to take a different position between now and Saturday. But I don't have any. I don't have any objective to waiting.
Well, my thought was that. My thought was that when town meeting opens, there'll be special town meeting, and then our operating budget comes up as part of Article 5. So my thought was that there's some time Saturday morning for us to agree what our motion is before Article 5 comes up. So that we will have a motion, but we can decide it Saturday morning.
Yeah, that makes sense. Right. No, I think that makes some sense. Yeah, do other board members want to weigh in? Shannon, that's probably best for you, I imagine. We could have another chance to kind of make a final decision on this on Saturday morning. How about Matt? Do you have a perspective?
Only to say my only suggestion, I think, was superseded by Julia's, in that before we make any sort of judgment or vote this minute, I noticed that we have some folks from the public, and I don't want to make any assumptions, but they've had a chance to listen to what we've been talking about. Perhaps they came because they have some perspective on the fiscal situation. I don't know. So I'm wondering if it would be more appropriate to have open this things up for public comment before we make any sort of a vote on our position.
I would love that. Anyone? No?
Comments, questions, anything?
Nope. Okay.
It's all us.
Good.
So I think John and I were just looking at then our new, okay, so if we were going to take option 4,
So, let me just, want to
Do you
walk
wanna
through
walk
it.
through it?
yeah.
So here's how I look at it. We have a gap of 172,350.
172 is the gap.
172,350.
350.
Yeah.
It's crazy to be talking this granular, but yeah, 172,350.
Okay.
If we are theoretically going to request an additional 101,000 round, that means we would need to cut 71,350 from our budget. So our new number would be 35,695.
Right.
000.
Okay.
If that logic works, and I think it does.
Using the 101,600, yeah.
So basically our level service budget, let me go back, Tim, can you go back to the very beginning? Keep going, keep going. And just squeeze that down a little bit, shrink that a little bit. So, again, with these changes from the original, our level services budget would be that.
Right.
And then we have to cut 71,350, and so that's the math. So
Right.
if you take 71,350 from there, you're at 35,695. Just want to make sure that logic works.
And, so what I would, John, can I just add, which you can do, but it's very unfortunate that you're doing it against the backdrop of record financial health in our community, that you're being asked to cut 71,000. I get it in 2009. I get it when there's declining property values. I get it when there's greatly reduced growth in revenue, but probably times have never been better. So that's, I'd say, is frustrating. I know you can do that. I know you can find the 70 things to do it at a time when town's financial health is, in the Commonwealth's financial health, and dare say the U.S. overall economy and health is so strong. Normally organizations cut when times are tough, and when times are good, you invest in organizations to create new programming, take some risk, try things that hopefully can move our district forward. But at a time when we have probably the greatest resources Duxbury has had in many years, we're being asked to take a $70,000 cut. So I have no doubt that you can do that, and you can find it and do it in a way that minimizes the impact on our students and staff. But it's just unfortunate that we're being asked to do it against this backdrop of the economy and our town's finances.
I'd also say too, Peter, what's frustrating about that is we're being asked to not be conservative, right? So we have already cut $150,000 because we have 5 retirements. And so I can't guarantee that we can replace teachers at a lower cost, but we've been asked to do that, and we were, in good faith, made that cut from the level services budget. We're adding an additional $150,000 from circuit breaker, which I would not recommend. I don't think it's the best business practice. So we're being asked to not be conservative, when I think all these assumptions from the town are dramatically conservative. And so that, I'm equally frustrated.
I'd rather not yield and make cuts and sort of resign myself to making, or resigning you to making $70,000 worth of cuts at town meeting as a point of order. I would rather, if there is free cash, and that free cash, it's true, that free cash has been allocated to be spent at the meeting, there's been some serious opacity around those numbers until today. So I'm not sure I feel right about voting to make cuts in the face of particularly in the face of the situation at the middle schools with the high class sizes. I think that that is just terrible. Really, really bad. And there may be some thinking that I'm not aware of, but I don't know what we sort of lose or risk by making that argument at town meeting versus resigning ourselves to the lower number before town meeting.
I think the crux of it is that we have to identify a source of funds. Right.
So are they bringing a piece of paper saying free cash is 0? I mean, can you dumb it down for me?
They sent a piece of paper that said free cash is 101,600.
No,
Okay, so that's-
Oh, no, sorry, free
unused,
cash.
unused
Unused
tax.
tax.
Two options are unused tax
Yeah.
levy and free cash.
Right.
Unused tax levy, this year was 429, but the
Right.
estimate for next year is 101.
Right.
So
And
what's
then
the 2.9 million?
That's free cash, and
And they've spent every
that's
penny.
effectively spent down to,
And this is
28.
what we received this afternoon.
Well, the free
The
cash has
spreadsheet.
been, the free cash, I think, has been known.
The free cash has been known, but the spend,
The spend is in the special
So-
town meeting, right?
So, Matt?
These are the articles?
In
In the
What I would-
spreadsheet?
No.
No. Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Would,
Peter.
I was just going to say, would Rainey be prepared to just answer a couple of questions for clarification from the committee? Because it sounds like, Matt,
That's right.
you have some questions about that information.
Yep, he's going to take a call and then he'll come back in.
Sure. My only point is that,
Okay.
unless I'm probably missing something, but I'm looking at a spreadsheet that says levy and free cash dated today.
yeah, today, yep,
Sorry?
yep,
Okay.
it's 2 tabs, right, yeah.
Yeah, that was sent today. We didn't have this information in the free cash tab until today. Article 1A, Article 1B, Article 1C, 1D, right? Those articles represent the spend for the 2.9.
Yeah, but the articles, of course, were decided and published.
Those were in a
the
public
beginning
forum.
of February, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we knew how much the spend was going to be. We just didn't know how much that figure, the free cash, was going to be. Am I right? Is that right, Peter or John?
That's the way
Yeah.
I understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That we knew how much they intended to spend. We just didn't know how big a pool of money they had.
Well, how can they,
Although it's a little complicated,
How
because
can they-
they did offer 92 last week. I'm
yeah,
not
how can
sure,
they
yeah,
intend to
yeah.
spend money that they don't know what they have?
Well, I mean,
They backed
do.
into the number.
Well, they know, but they do know what
They do know
well,
what
maybe,
they-
but they do
Yeah.
know what they have. That's, so that number is a certified number, so that's a public,
Right.
record, but.
Yeah, so the free cash that they're spending is was in the account in July.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is a question you could ask Rainey, that I believe that those numbers have been fairly fluid because, as John mentioned, there was some potential, increase to the stabilization fund using free cash. So you could ask him. I'm not exactly sure of the process, but that'd be a good question for Rainey. When do these things get nailed down? My impression is it's probably pretty recent.
Just walked out. Randy just took a call.
He just stepped out.
And I just, basically just help him, maybe just explain those numbers. I mean, just like where are they, how are they?
When he comes back in, you want to have him up here? Or?
Well,
Yeah.
we'll have to defer to him and see if he wants,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's just. Yep. He's a tall guy.
Well, I guess the question is, when did the town know how much free cash it had?
Well, so that's a certified, in terms of like, if you go back to the free cash chart,
When is it certified?
I don't know when, July or something.
July 1st.
So they've known since then how much free cash there is? And they decided as of today how to spend it?
Well, so
I don't-
that's what they had in July, and then it's.
I don't have that document.
No,
It's
that's
on
up
the-
on the trip behind you.
Well, that's why.
So, everyone bear in mind that free cash is not spent until the special town meeting and the annual town meeting. So what is reflected on that spreadsheet is the articles that are proposed to be voted on at town meeting. It is subject to change. Sometimes the town does not support certain expenditures. Sometimes they actually ask to spend more. So I think that's an estimate, but the estimate looks like that they're going to spend 2.9 million very nearly. So if all those articles pass at town meeting, there'll be whatever that figure is, 28,000 remaining in free cash.
Okay,
Well,
whatever.
I mean, you
I
can
think,
ask.
I think there might be value in waiting.
That's what I thought. So if you're okay, if everybody's okay with it, Peter and Shannon, particularly because you're not here, I mean, you are, but you're not, and we've kind of just digesting this information and trying to make sense of it. I think I'd like to reiterate my suggestion that we defer kind of the confirmation of our motion for town meeting until the morning of town meeting. I'm happy to get there early, you know, so that we have some time prior to 9 a.m. Or if you want to do it, you know, when town meeting is, when the special town meeting is being conducted or whatever. But I think there's some value to just hanging tight for a minute or a few days and trying to digest what we need to do.
I'm cool with that.
Are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, great.
I'm going to ask the public.
I would prefer going before. I think we should be there for the special town meeting, just in case things come up. I think we should be in the room.
Yeah,
So
I believe
the meeting is posted for an 8 a.m. start.
great.
8 a.m.?
8 a.m.
No, so our posting is at 8 a.m. So for the school. We
Oh,
posted.
for our meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a public school committee meeting, open meeting law compliant
Yep.
meeting posted for 8 a.m.
8
Okay.
a.m. on Saturday.
8 a.m. on
Okay.
Saturday, yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. Yeah.
So our position tonight is we're not going to take a vote yet. We're going to wait. Yes?
If that's, is there, we don't need to make a motion, but is there a consensus on the board that we want to wait till Saturday morning?
Yeah.
I'm certainly indifferent.
3 yeses here.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Okay.
So, want to have a brief discussion about what we'll present on Saturday, and thoughts about who would like to speak, and also any action that we would like to see happen between now and Saturday morning at 8.
Okay.
One question I had was, John, if you're planning to present like a PowerPoint deck during the meeting, would you mind circulating it to the committee so we can take a look at it?
Yep, still a work in progress, but basically it'll look very similar. Yes, I'll forward that to you, but it's sort of a modification of what I've presented several times. It talks about the process, how we sort of arrive at the level service number. I think it's really valuable information for people to understand.
Are you going to add some of these as well?
So that's a question. I don't know how complicated the number. I don't know is the short answer. Julia asked if I was going to include some of the slides that we're showing tonight. I'm not sure, Julia. I personally would rather focus, for me, on the process,
Sure.
The methodology. Talk a little bit about the new documents and why it's so important to us. And I'd also like to share some comp data per pupil expenditures. I've kind of reanalyzed that using I think a solid set of towns. I thought it was solid to begin with, but just I've kind of modified that. Teacher salary, things like that.
Great.
To me, I think I need to be the process and
Yeah.
justification
Yeah.
person.
Is this, are you planning on making this presentation with the backdrop of we're short and here's why we're short?
So I would love
what's your objective?
I would love the opportunity to show how we craft the level services budget, because I think there's a narrative out there in town that we're being unreasonable. an objective observer, when you look at that presentation, there's nothing unreasonable about it. In fact, it's boring. What we've asked for this year is bare bones, no matter how you slice it. So I want to show that methodology. It's simple. I mean, it's not it's not complicated. And talk a little bit about why we would have even talked about adding staff. Why, this notion of actually advocating for positions, whether or not there's funding, doesn't mean you shouldn't have dialogue in town about the needs of the community. I'll say all the time, because a need goes unfunded doesn't mean the need has gone away. So I want to have that. I want to have that opportunity. If you
But
don't
what do you
me to,
want
that's
them to
fine.
walk away with?
Well, I think this is I think this is all about the future. I mean, we're effectively backed into a corner this year. I think we need to leave that meeting with an acknowledgement that the process has to change, that we are still committed to advocating for and for improvements.
Yeah, it's, John, if I could chime in, it's, it's spring, hope's eternal. The clocks are changing, I think, Saturday night. The Red Sox will be playing at Fenway Park before long. I think with Dr. Antonucci, we're in the first inning here. John, I think it's important you introduce yourself to the community. You've never been in front of the town at large. So please take the opportunity to tell a little bit about your background. I think, Matt, having Dr. Antonucci present the level service budget, and then the school committee present anything different than the level service budget, meaning his focus should be on his background and what we're presenting for level services. And that was, I think then after that, I would like to, in a more condensed version, make the case why I believe this budget represents a shift in town priorities and a sensitive to the 5-year history of operating budget support for the schools. I want to keep it very concise and simple. I don't want to do a performance review of the process, but I really think it would be best to have Dr. Antonucci kind of say how he develops a budget, how he communicates financial transparency, literacy, and clarity. And then any of us, I'd like to just do what I just said, which is, compared to 5-year history, this is different. This year is different. And I feel it's against a backdrop of kind of very strong financial health in Duxbury. And I really think it wouldn't be inappropriate for any of you who wanted to speak. I think we want to be careful not to get into recognizing we're in the first inning. We're not playing a 1-inning game. We're playing a 9-inning game. We don't want to make it more difficult for us to be successful next year. But I think we want to say, we're not okay with that. We will 19, but we're going to commence our advocacy work starting now for 2020.
What do you think, Matt?
So I don't know. I'd say anyone else would like to, speak at town meeting, I think that's certainly something we should, consider and talk about.
What do you think?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Let me be more direct, though, because we're doing a lot of talking here, and I think that's great. But Dr. Antonucci just said one thing that I think has been missed this entire meeting until he said it, and I'm afraid it's going to get missed at town meeting. And I'm not sure how to say it in such a way that would be sort of, I don't want to do a disservice to what our mission and vision is, particularly for next year. I don't want to make any undue sort of bad blood or enemies when we don't need to. But here's the problem. I think John's completely right. I think that there's a perception out there that this school system gets more than it should be getting, when in fact the opposite is true. And that's not saying anything bad specifically about anyone. I just think that's the perception. I think the perception is completely wrong. And I think the perception is wrong because, at least to me, it's been proven through the new budgeting process. I mean, this thing was built, I think in your words, cell by cell, rebuilt cell by cell. It's completely transparent and it's completely dispassionate. So if I had my way, I would make sure that one of the things that the people walked away with at that town meeting was an understanding, at least of our position, that the perception of our sort of budgeting award system is backwards. I agree with you. I think that there's a perception that the school system gets more, when I kind of think that it's anemic. And I would love for that statement to be made in such a way that it doesn't sort of, put us behind the 8 ball next year. But I think that's important because, and we can go through, I think we can and should go through the whole budgeting process. I think that's going to be very, very informative. But I think some sort of statement needs to be made to that effect because they're not going to remember all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But they will remember one thing. And if they had to remember one thing, I would recommend that they remember that the school system has been getting by with sort of Band-Aids and bubble tape. But the perception is completely different. I was talking to a guy today from Newton who was like, well, your school system's like, you guys are aces, right? You get everything. But that's just incorrect. Mm-hmm. It's like your earlier point, Kelly. People move here. It's not just they move here because of this. They move here because they think the school system is like some sort of, sort of Greek Parthenon. People are kind of running over and feeding people grapes. That's just not how it's working. Yeah. So I would love for them to understand that it's sort of nobody's fault, but there is a perception, I think, in the town that the fiscal situation at the school is much healthier than it really is. And that's what I would like them to walk away with. If we can't get the budget that we need to hit level services and be in contract compliance, that sucks. Maybe that's how it's supposed to be. But I would love for the public to understand that, you know what I mean? Like we are not supported financially in the way that we need to be.
There is some per pupil expenditure data, and there's a small group of people in town, I think, who kind of poo-poo per pupil expenditure. Per pupil expenditure data is the only apples-to-apples comparison statistic or piece of data in the state or in the Commonwealth.
And it includes all town expenditures except for debt.
Exactly, right?
So it includes the laptops, it includes everything.
It's an incorrect narrative, and so I will share that. I will share that against towns that are very much like us or even neighbors. But I mean, the biggest ed reform, the biggest education reform package in the country, it was based on a lawsuit back in 1992 in Brockton, and it was all about per pupil expenditure. Per pupil expenditure is the Bible, actually, and it comes from the state. And so we'll share that, but I think we need to have a broader audience than the three people who think it's not a good number.
Yeah, and I think I did some, just a second, Peter, I was just going to chime in with what John and Matt were saying, that the perception is, has evolved to become incorrect. It probably was correct maybe 10 years ago, or maybe when the school department was talking about building the new high school, middle school, and introducing the laptop program. But times have changed outside of Duxbury, and so I did some research, and for example, since 2000, 58% of all school floor area in Massachusetts has been either completely remodeled or rebuilt from scratch. So the fact that we have a new school building is like,
who cares?
Average,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
If you look at the top 50 school districts, 38% of them, that's 19 school districts, have one-to-one laptop programs. That's more than a third. So we are what is now known as the new average for top performing school districts. We have nice facilities, we have nice computers, but that's average for the type of educational provision that Duxbury seems to want for its children. So, the perception just needs to be changed, not about what we have, but what everybody else has, because it's really not remarkable what we've got here in Duxbury. And we need to kind of take care of it and foster what investments have been made and make the most of them. But it's not, a fur-lined, ocean-going enterprise. It's really rather ordinary. So,
average.
Sorry, Peter, I interrupted you.
Well, no, not at all. I did want to say, I would say the last time the community was broadly engaged in school initiatives was the school building project, and that from a period of, call it 6 to 10 years ago. I think it's very fair to say the community has never really been engaged broadly in a discussion about school operating budgets. We have a new superintendent who we've hired to help us move forward. We didn't think this year was the right year to engage the community broadly because we have a brand new superintendent who has not yet developed a vision for Duxbury's, or even an assessment of Duxbury's strengths and weaknesses and opportunities for growth. That will change because the community believes in our public schools. We've never really engaged the community in a way that we will going forward. So I think, and as John has said, we're in a bit of an echo chamber with a very small community that is basically saying the school is adequately funded, make do with what we're telling you is able. And that's not the reflection of the broader community. And we know that because when we engage with the community of all stripes, parents, grandparents, parents of grown children that are in Duxbury, all I believe will support a reasonable request to support our public schools. So I would say this is not the year because we haven't really engaged the community, but that will be different. We will engage the community because unfortunately I feel the lack of engagement over the last 6 or 7 years has led to an erosion in our capacity to operate effectively and really continue to have Duxbury be a leading district and and it's not in line of where we'll be in the future, isn't in line with our parents, our grandparents' expectations. So I think that's a part of it, Matt, is we just part of the process the last 6 years to really engage. The school committee, I would say the average attendance has been no more than 300 people, 200 to 300 people. It's a very small number of people that are deeply invested in the budgeting process from a committee standpoint. It's, the finance committee is a very small committee. And then fiscal advisory does the capital. So there's really literally quite, dozens of people that have been really engaged in the budgeting process. Sadly, I don't think we've been as, haven't had the results that we would have liked with those dozen people we've engaged with. So it's up to us to kind of engage a broader community.
Okay.
Fair enough. So, Rainey, we just had questions about free cash. How the numbers, the certified number is determined and then how it's been allocated. I'm sure that's an easy one, right?
Thank you, yes.
Thank you.
Leave my attire home, I would have a seawall.
Oh. I saw you on Twitter.
Huh?
I saw the
Yeah,
newscast.
made the national news yesterday, unfortunately, for all the wrong reasons. Let me walk you through the first spreadsheet,
Thank
if
you.
that's
That would be
okay.
great,
Do you guys
yeah.
all have copies of it?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you look at the column on the left, that refers to the article number and the motion within it. So what you're looking at is Article 6, Motion 1 for the town's capital budget, and you'll see that what was allocated in 2018, and then we go down through Article 6.3, Article 7, those are the capital budget articles. This is where we're putting the free cash, just so you're aware. Let's see. Then we
And
go
that's
down.
the free cash as of July 1st. Am I right?
Let me think.
294.
Oh, that was
I think
for,
so, yeah.
Peter, can you hear him?
yes,
Yeah, I can.
yes. Let's go down to the lower part, because that's going to be the part that relates to this year.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was walking you through last year, and you don't need that right now. With regard to the free cash, so Article 1A, Article 1B, this is all the first article in the special town meeting. It's the supplemental appropriations
Right.
article.
Yeah.
That allows us to add an influx of money into certain budget lines that may need some assistance for various reasons. So the snow and ice is one of those lines. The health insurance line is another one. The accounting office is another, IT is another, the PowerPoint bridge, that's where you see a big chunk of money going, 265,000. The legal line is related to the PowerPoint bridge for the litigation that we've got going, DPW admin, and then it walks on down through the remaining articles in the special for paying off the bridge, paying off school debt, the SPED reserve, the pension reserve, OPEB stabilization, then compensated absences. So then you get to the annual town meeting, and then you see where we spend the bulk of the free cash, which is in the town's capital plan and the school's capital plan. And once all is said and done, then you see we wind up with a balance of $28,944.30.
And the 28,000 is in addition to the 101,000.
The 101?
So that's unused tax levy, yeah.
Right.
Levy 10.
Yeah, that's a different spreadsheet. That's the,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, that's the tax levy, correct.
Okay.
So originally there was 92 on the table for us.
Yes, 92,350.
So
That's
where,
correct.
is that still there or is it gone?
No, it's gone.
So where did it go?
Into the bridge.
So the bridge had 92 less a couple days ago? I'm
No.
not trying to be smart.
No, don't worry. No, I don't take it that you're trying to be that way. No. We had, I don't know what our balance was as of February 20th. You'll have to forgive me, I don't have that. But around February 20th, that's when we had our meeting with the engineer on the Powder Point Bridge. We knew we had a problem. They refined it for us last week, brought it to the board on Monday. That problem is now about $250,000.
Okay.
Okay.
One of the things we were trying to do was figure out if we could free up some money over on the, on what would be Article 6, which is the payoff of the school, as opposed to doing it in 1 year versus 2. I've got Peter Quigley I'm looking at you, Peter. I've got Peter Quigley researching that along with John Adams, our new finance director, to see if we can figure out a way to maybe save some money if we split it into 2 years instead of doing it all in 1 year.
Right.
If we split it into 2, then we can save a little money.
That's right, yeah.
So that's one of the maneuvers we're trying to figure out if we can help you with that.
Okay.
Okay.
That remains to be seen. I will be meeting with John Adams tomorrow morning.
John Adams.
Yes.
Doesn't he make
No
beer?
relation to me.
Oh, it's Sam Adams that makes beer. Starting to lose it.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
for that.
You're welcome.
Okay. So that's where we are.
So if we could tap that 28, then our new number would be
We'd be 50 short.
35,723.
I would strongly discourage that.
You would what?
Strongly discourage that.
Well, I know you would.
I'm sure you're aware of what's been going on over the course of the last week. We've seen some remarkable events. It's staggering to think that it's all happened in a week. You know, we had a community with 98% power outage. We were burning through overtime like there was no tomorrow for fire and police and DPW. Just getting things back to a restoration point 5 days later, you know, we still don't have 100%. We're probably at 98% now in terms of full restoration, compounded with the fact that I've got a seawall falling in. We're going to be hitting the reserve fund to figure that one out. That seawall project, right now, just for the repair aspect, is running probably at about 75 to 100,000. The project in total remains to be seen, but if we do full replacement, that's probably about $1 million for every 150 feet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a reason we don't spend it all.
Yeah.
That's one of them.
Yeah.
I'd imagine that'd be a borrowing, though, if you ever did a major project like that, or?
For the big project
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
seawall, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's why we did the big press conference yesterday, to see if we could seek state and federal funds. When you need the money from the big boys, that's when you call in the media. That's how that works.
Good call, good job on it.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's not, you know, it's not a place you want to be. You don't want to be in front of the cameras. You don't want them around. But, you know, when you have a catastrophic failure like that, you need to grasp at every straw you can. So,
Great. Well, thank you very
That
much.
help you?
Thanks, Randy.
Yeah.
Yes,
Good enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
I just have a, not a question, but really an ask. Rainey, are you still at the table?
Yes, I am.
Rainey, we'd like, the school committee would like to invite you and our new finance director to an upcoming meeting because no matter what the outcome is of town meeting, we're very concerned about fiscal 2020 budget for the schools, and we'd like to get started both on substance, but also more importantly, the process to make sure that we try and align what our needs are and what our asks are in keeping with town resources. So does that, an invitation will be forthcoming, but we'd very much like both of you to come back and have a discussion with us.
Oh, I appreciate, oh, God, sorry. I appreciate that, Peter. Dr. Antonucci and I have had conversations on that already, and basically what we think we probably have benefit for everybody is to run a Budget 101 course, essentially. John Adams does that as part of his accounting organization, so he's very, very good at it. But just to kind of give everybody a primer on how it all plays out. You know, you start with the revenues, and then you work from that point. You figure out what you got, and then what you need, and what you can spend. But yeah, I think it'd be a beneficial thing. We're not going to do it the day after town meeting, though, Peter. We'll probably wait a couple weeks. That's okay?
So Rainey, with that in mind, and I served on school committee prior, and then I came back on. So we've always sort of been given a number. So with what you're saying, it really doesn't matter what our needs are. We're just going to be given a number. And again, I don't mean it's to be disrespectful, but it's whatever the town has to give us is what we get, regardless of what the school needs to operate.
Well, in the past, at least in the 5 years I've been here, we've tried to work through everything, figure out, well, Dr. Antonucci's been doing this for a long time, too. You try and figure out what your priorities are on a different level of prioritization. That's true with every department. We do it with all of them. DPW will have its priorities. The police department will have theirs. For instance, last year, the police department said they needed 3 police officers. We tried to get 2. We could only afford 1. It's based on a question of affordability. What's sustainable? When we do that, we don't do it with non-recurring revenue. We can only do it with recurring revenue. You do it with a one-time cash influx, and you've got a problem the next year because the money might not be there. You're right when you say that the town's done pretty well over the last couple of years, but that's not the trend we're seeing. And what determines that? The canary in the coal mine is always the building department. If building permits go up, that means that we're probably going to have a pretty good position for the following year. We're not seeing that this year. We did last year and the year before. It was quite remarkable. But also we had Island Creek come in, which added certainly a huge push to our numbers in terms of what permits we're doing. That's where we get the money. It's all based on the revenues. There's only so many beach stickers you can sell, and that fluctuates because it all depends on what the presence of the plovers does out there. It depends on what storms like this will do.
It's got to be Peter playing with a can.
Peter, don't play with your can, please.
Peter, we're getting some noise from you there.
Oh, sorry about that.
So,
Teeth are grinding.
you know, we're always willing to look at the process and see if there's a better way to do it. And if there is, we'll do it.
Yeah.
So, well, then the town, to prioritize, you're not prioritizing our budget. You're just giving us a number. It's up to John to prioritize our budget.
Yeah,
So-
typically that's the way it works, is, at least it's worked in the 5 years I've been here, that, you know, we start off in the budget message saying whether we can afford a percentage increase or not, and then we work from there. But we make sure we've got the revenue to allow for that before we even say what you can or can't do.
I think, sorry, I was just going to say, I think perhaps things weren't very productive this year because that discussion occurred in a format that school committee didn't really have access to. So, I think that going forward, it'll be lovely to have you come here and do Budget 101, but then I think, you know, more conversations with school committee about priorities and needs is kind of where we would like to
I don't
take
disagree.
it.
You had you had a number of variables this year that we didn't have in the past. You have a new superintendent who hadn't been here. I mean, he'd been here only a few months before we hand him the document that says, here you go, congratulations, here's the budget document. And the schools are always I won't say at a disadvantage, but the numbers come in, the numbers that you need to figure out what you've got to do for the coming year are are behind our schedule probably by 2 to 2.5, maybe 3 months, because you won't get your enrollment figures
That's
until
right.
October, and we're already well underway in August. So when you don't have your enrollment figures, it makes things a little harder. You run in a compressed time frame, because the budget was essentially wrapped up just before Christmas.
Yeah,
So, but the reason for that is because of our town meeting timing.
that's right.
When you have a town meeting timed in March, you're doing things a lot earlier.
Yeah.
My colleagues and John's colleagues right now are in the midst of getting ready to do their budget presentations. I mean, they're not going in until April or May.
Yeah, yeah,
Good, bad, or otherwise, that's just the way it is.
yeah.
I think the fundamental issue, and it's not I don't mean to say it's a disagreement, is that in my definition of budgeting, needs come first, right? I mean, we didn't have a needs conversation this year at
That's
all.
right. But-
This is, in my opinion, a waste of time. I mean, what we did this year is a complete epic waste of time. We were
completely
bottom
agree.
lined in November, we've gone backwards. And so, in terms of process, I mean, that's, when we talk process, that's what we're talking about, is, I get the revenue side, but budgeting is all about needs and priorities. And so, not having the ability to have that conversation collectively with the community, not just with 3 people, with the community, I think is really important. So, and Randy and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
Well, and that gets to
I'm not
my
speaking
question.
yeah.
I mean, our needs don't really matter
This
if
year
we're
they didn't
just
matter,
going to be
yeah.
given a number. I don't want to go through everything that we went through and spend all the time that we spent. And here we are, right? All of our needs that we've presented, and we have overcrowding, and the whole gig. Doesn't matter. Here's your number. It's very frustrating from our standpoint. I get it. I'm not somebody who shops on a credit card. If you don't have the money, you don't have the money. But there is a disconnect, and it's very frustrating. It's frustrating for parents and staff and all of us. And to me, and I've said it tonight a million times before you came, it's incomprehensible that we couldn't come to an agreement over $174,000
For level service.
for level service, and now we have to have cuts. We can't meet our contractual obligation. So we're essentially being told we have to cut staff or cut somewhere else, that we've given you everything we have, and we don't have any cuts.
Yeah,
We have
it-
more special ed expenditures that we're not, last year we were given $400,000 for, that we're not, that money's disappeared, but we have those students.
Right.
So to me, that just doesn't,
As you know, in our
if there's a bottom line number, that's fine, then I don't see why we should go through what we go through to present needs.
Yeah, well, we can certainly talk about that after town meeting fleshes itself out in terms of the process, and see if there's a way to improve it, add greater clarity. Yeah, the difference that we have, that the town views, is that of $92,350. I know that you'd like more than that, but that was,
No, Randy, but that's
What we were
assuming, that's
aiming
asking
to.
us to make an $80,000 cut.
it does, that's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Because as you remember, back in January, we had met and agreed to that.
Well, we've gone backwards since then, so I don't want to rehash what has been a torturous 4-month conversation for you and me. I mean,
And now
it's,
it's free
yeah.
cash money that belongs in our operating budget, because we own all of it. We've proven that we own all this to operate the schools. So, and Betsy's quoted today in the Clipper saying that's not the way to do business, you don't do it through free cash.
Correct.
And that was our offer.
Which is-
no, it's our operating budget, so please give it to us in our operating budget. And the answer is no. you
Yes,
can't.
we are clear on the understanding that you would prefer to have it in the operating budget. We were recommending that you put the $92,000 into the sped reserve. That's where the disagreement lies,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Well, plenty of food for thought for
Yeah.
after town meeting, I think.
Yeah, and with respect to town meeting in the morning itself, you'll have everybody there at 8 o'clock.
Perfect.
Meeting. You folks will be meeting, Finance Committee, Fiscal
Yeah.
Advisory, Board of Selectmen,
Yeah.
and anybody else that's got a meeting. So we're all there together, so if we need to hash stuff out, we can.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds great.
We can arm wrestle, we can shoot darts, throw dice, figure something out, you know.
Okay, that sounds good. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, again, I apologize for my appearance.
luck.
No, not at all.
Thank
Luck
you.
with the wall.
Oh, yeah.
I can't believe
Thank
you're
you.
going back out there.
Have a wonderful evening, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you too.
Jeez.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess our position is we're not going to take a position, Peter, tonight. We're going to wait until Saturday morning.
I bet Shannon's thrilled with that.
Yeah, Shannon, you still awake?
Yeah, snow coming on 3 in the morning.
Oh, my gosh. Poor Shannon.
right, well, let's get Shannon to bed.
Yeah,
Okay.
All right,
okay.
everybody.
Yeah, so no public comments. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, we're good.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night,
Night.
Shannon.
Thank
Good night.
you.